Welcome back to chapter number 17, Breathing and Exchange of Gases. In the previous two classes, we have learned about the respiratory organs and mechanism of breathing. Today, we will learn about the exchange of gases. The exchange of gases, oxygen and carbon dioxide, takes place in alveoli, which is the primary sites. And this exchange takes place by the process of simple diffusion. So you should remember this term, simple diffusion, and this is dependent on the pressure or the concentration gradient. When the pressure of oxygen or carbon dioxide is more, that shows that the concentration of these gases are also more. So we write these two terms together, pressure oblique concentration. Now this rate of diffusion is dependent on three factors. First is the pressure or the concentration gradient. Second is the solubility of the gases, that is how easily the gas, that particular gas, whether oxygen or carbon dioxide, gets dissolved into the blood. Third is the thickness of the membranes through which the gaseous exchange takes place. Now in very simple language, I'll try to explain it again. This exchange of gas, as we know that the respiratory system, we have two parts. The conducting part, that is from the trachea and its primary, secondary, tertiary bronchioles, and the exchange part, which is the alveoli and its duct. So here this process is taking place in the alveoli. जब ऑक्सीजन या कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड को डिफ्यूज होना है, दैट इज एक एयर से जो एल्वेलस है, एयर से एल्वेलस में पहुंचता है, वहाँ से उसको जाना है ब्लड में. तो दिस प्रोसेस, दिस रेट ऑफ डिफ्यूशन, इसमें डिफ्यूज होकर जाना पड़ता है. ये तीन फैक्टर पे डिपेंड होता है. पहले प्रेशर या कंसंट्रेशन ग्रेडियंट, दैट इज वो पर्टिकुलर गैस का कितना प्रेशर है या वो पर्टिकुलर गैस कितना कंसंट्रेटेड है. सेकेंड जो क्या है कि वो ऑक्सीजन या कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड, दैट गैस, पर्टिकुलर गैस, how easily, what is its solubility of that gas into the blood. Then third is the thickness of the membrane, that is वो जो पर्दा रहता है जिसके बीच में ये एक्सचेंज होता है ऑक्सीजन और कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड. एक जैसे कि एल्वेलस से ब्लड में कैसे जाता है, वहाँ पे एक मेम्ब्रेन रहता है, तो वो उस मेम्ब्रेन का थिकनेस पे डिपेंड करता है. नाउ लेट्स नो व्हाट इज पार्शियल प्रेशर. व्हेन there is a mixture of gases, then the pressure which is contributed by an individual gas is known as the partial pressure. And this is represented as small letter P and the chemical formula of that particular gas. Like for partial pressure of oxygen, we write it as PO2, and partial pressure of carbon dioxide, we write as PCO2. Now this is one table that you can see in your NCERT book. It is the pressure or the concentration gradient in different parts. Like when in the respiratory gas, that is respiratory gas, we have oxygen and carbon dioxide. In the atmosphere, what is the partial pressure of oxygen? It is 159, and the partial pressure of the carbon dioxide in the atmospheric air is 0.3. Then in the alveoli, the partial pressure of oxygen is 104 and that of the carbon dioxide in the alveoli is 40. In the blood, that is deoxygenated blood, we have oxygenated and deoxygenated. Deoxygenated blood means which is devoid of the oxygen or where there is more of carbon dioxide. So the oxygen pressure, partial pressure of oxygen in the deoxygenated blood is 40 and that of carbon dioxide is 45. And oxygenated blood has 95% oxygen and 40 millimeter of mercury of carbon dioxide. In the tissues, we can again see that partial pressure of oxygen is 40 and that of the carbon dioxide is 45. This table just shows that there is constant or there is a maintenance of the pressure gradient throughout in all the parts. That is, the pressure is different. In nowhere the pressure between the two gases is similar. We should also know that the solubility of carbon dioxide is 20 to 25 times higher than that of the oxygen. Diffusion membrane. Now what is diffusion membrane? Diffusion membrane, like I told, rate of diffusion is also dependent on the thickness of this membrane. Diffusion membrane is from where it's like you can imagine a membrane. In one side there is air, the other side there is blood. So it has three major layers. First is the thin squamous epithelium of the alveoli. Second is the endothelium of the alveolar capillaries. Third is the basement substance in between the two layers. I will show you a very simple diagram. Yes, this is what I was discussing just now. It has got the three layers, three major layers. First is the squamous epithelium. The squamous epithelium of the alveolar wall. This you can see in the green, the first layer. This is the first layer. Then we have the second layer, that is the endothelium of the blood capillaries. I'm tracing this layer. You can see that green layer, right? Endothelium of the blood capillary. And in between you see yellow colored substance, that is the basement substance. Now this is a diagrammatic representation of exchange of gases at the alveolus and the body tissues with blood and transport of the oxygen and carbon dioxide. Before we know this, let's know the anatomy of the heart. This is the heart, the four-chambered heart. We have right atrium, the blue color, that is the right side of the heart, and the red color is the left side of the heart. This is the right side of the heart, this is the left side of the heart. So we have, this is right atrium, this is right ventricle, this is left atrium, this is left ventricle. These are the four chambers of the heart. So the blood goes from the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. So these are the two great vessels. So the blood enters into the right atrium from the superior and the inferior vena cava. This is the superior and the inferior vena cava into the right atrium. From the right atrium, when it contracts, the blood is pushed into the right ventricle. RV is the right ventricle. When right ventricle contracts, the blood is again pushed out through the pulmonary artery, and this blood goes into the lungs. You can see here. So this is the simple diagram showing the anatomy of the heart. Then this is the red part, is the left side of the heart. In the left side of the heart, we have pulmonary veins. See, these are the pulmonary veins. This pulmonary veins comes from the lungs and it enters into the heart. It enters into the left atrium, that is the left side of the heart, and then from the left atrium it goes into the left ventricle, that is the lower chamber. From the left ventricle, this blood is pumped out into the aorta, and from aorta it enters into the systemic circulation. So I hope you are now familiar with this anatomy and physiology of heart. So this blue part is it is containing the deoxygenated blood. That is because the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, you get the blood, and this blood is pumped through the pulmonary artery into the lungs, and red is the oxygenated blood which enters through the pulmonary veins and enters into the left ventricle, then pumped out through the aorta into the systemic circulation. Now let's see what is given in your NCERT book. See, this is the diagram which is given, and this is a bit smaller, so I'll make it more clearer in the easier picture. This is a diagram which shows the exchange of gases and the transport of the oxygen from the blood to the tissues. This picture is taken from the internet. I got what is it written? Byju's. Okay, so when we inspire air, what happens? The alveolus is filled with the air containing oxygen, carbon dioxide. Here the PO2 is 104 millimeter of mercury and PCO2 is 40 millimeter of mercury. Now as we can see here, we have in the blue color, it is the systemic vein. The blue color is the systemic vein. This is the systemic vein, and we have the in the pink color we have the systemic arteries. So in systemic arteries you see that the PO2 is 95 and PCO2 is 40, and in the alveolus the PO2 is 104 and PCO2 is 40 millimeter of mercury. So there is a pressure gradient between the two gases. PO2 is 104 in the alveolus and it is 95 in the systemic arteries. So so what happens, the oxygen will enter into the pulmonary vein to enter into the systemic arteries. See, this is something which is given wrong. This arrow diagram is wrong. It should be from the alveolus into the pulmonary vein. So just check in your NCERT diagram. That is the, I'll show you. So it is better to refer to your NCERT diagram. That source was incorrect because it showed the arrow mark in the opposite direction. It showed from the pulmonary veins to the alveolus. If it's not clear, you can see your own textbook. I'll explain here. So when the PO2, I told you, in the alveolus and in the systemic arteries, the PO2 is 95. Here it is 104. In the alveolus 104. So there is a pressure gradient between the alveolar air and the pulmonary systemic arteries. So the oxygen will enter from the high pressure to the low pressure. So it will enter into the pulmonary vein. See, oxygen is entering into the pulmonary vein, and this pulmonary vein will go into the left side of the heart to the left atrium, from the left atrium to the left ventricle, and then it is pumped out from the left ventricle into the aorta, and from the aorta it enters into the systemic arteries. And now you see here the pulmonary artery. This is the systemic veins. Again, if you compare here, the what happens now when the blood takes the oxygen, that is the oxygenated blood, no, this, the pink one is the oxygenated blood. So oxygen enters into the pulmonary vein, from the pulmonary vein into the left side of the heart, then it is pumped out through the aorta into the systemic arteries. Then this systemic arteries, they are rich in oxygen. So what happens in the tissue, the body tissues, where there is release of the carbon dioxide, so this oxygen will enter into the tissues, and this oxygen is then utilized by the tissues, and then carbon dioxide is given out. This oxygen, carbon dioxide, will enter into the systemic veins. In the systemic veins, see, these systemic veins carry the deoxygenated blood, that is the blood which is rich in carbon dioxide and devoid of, or it doesn't have the oxygen. It carries the deoxygenated blood. The systemic veins will carry this deoxygenated blood. Now you see the PO2, you compare it here. The PO2 is 40 millimeter of mercury, whereas in the alveolus PO2 is 104 and PCO2 is 45 and PCO2 is 40 here. So we see that PCO2 is more in the systemic veins as compared to the alveolar air. So the carbon dioxide, which is rich in the systemic veins, will enter into the alveolus. Before it enters into alveolus, it has to go through this tract. It will enter to the right side of the heart, from the right atrium to right ventricle. Then it is pumped with the help of the left ventricle. It pumps the blood into the pulmonary artery, and this pulmonary artery goes into the lungs and it reaches the alveolus. So now I have explained you the diagram which is given in your book. So please be very cautious when you choose any online source. Like I have shown you in the previous picture that the diagram is wrong. See, this is wrong. Oxygen enters from the alveolus to the pulmonary vein, not the vice versa. So here I end my part 3 of the chapter number 17. Thank you.